The history of Australian wine is inextricably tied to a couple of Scots. James Busby and the MacArthur family are both variously thought to have brought the first vines over from Europe to Australia back in the 19th century. And at Thistledown Wines, which was started by myself, Giles Cook and Fergal Tynan, we are carrying on that legacy of amazing Australian wine, coupled with a little bit of Scottish ingenuity. I'm standing in Grenache Vineyard in the McLaren Vale region of South Australia, and today marks the first pick of our old vine Grenache, for which Thistledown is a little bit of a specialist. We source fruit from probably about 16 different old vine sources throughout South Australia, and we make it in a very kind of low intervention style, really focusing on the energy and the brilliant stories that are behind many of these vineyards. I'm here at our winery in the Adelaide Hills in South Australia, and just introducing a wine called the Thorny Devil. Now, Thistledown's roots may be in Scotland, where I was brought up and where Fergal, one of the other founders, now lives, but our hearts are certainly in Australia, and that's where all of the winemaking and all of the fruit goes on. But that's not to say that a lot of the thought that goes into the wines and some of the inspiration for the labels comes from our homeland. And Thorny Devil is one of those. It's an old vine Grenache from McLaren Vale. And the first year that we ever produced this wine, we were looking in a vineyard and we found a lizard sitting on one of the vines. And it was a type of lizard called the Thorny Devil. So we thought that would be a pretty good name for a wine. But actually there's another reason why this is called the Thorny Devil, and there's always a couple of reasons with us. And that is that the thistle in our name is the national flower of Scotland. And it got to be the national flower of Scotland as a result of the Battle of Largs many centuries ago, where the Vikings were trying to invade Scotland through the west coast. And what happened was they tried to invade at night in the dark so that they could surprise the Scots. And in the dark they didn't realise that they were going to come up a beach and then stand in a field of thistles. And when they did so, they obviously screamed and they shouted and alerted the Scots to the invading marauders. And as a result they were repelled, and from that day onwards the thistle became the national flower of Scotland. So the Thorny Devil pays homage to that story. Whether it's 100% true or not, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, the Thorny Devil is an absolutely beautiful contemporary McLaren Vale old vine Grenache. Most of the vines are around about somewhere between 60 and 80 years old. Everything's hand-picked, it's wild fermented, minimal intervention. We use a lot of whole bunches in the ferment as well, so it gives it a bright, crunchy style. Nothing like a lot of the sort of the very big oaky Australian wines of the past. Much fresher, more contemporary, more elegant, more food-friendly, and a beautiful wine that forms part of our quite extensive range of Grenaches at Thistledown. Gorgeous Grenache is Thistledown's benchmark contemporary South Australian Grenache. It's founded on old vine fruit grown in the Riverland area of South Australia, but also with some beautiful old parcels of fruit from McLaren Vale and sometimes from Barossa as well. one of the most important aspects of Gorgeous Grenache is that it's really helped to provide the support and foundation for a lot of growers of old vine Grenache across the region who previously had struggled to sell their fruit until it became much more popular over the last kind of 5 to 10 years. As I've mentioned, all of the fruit is old, and we process it in a pretty minimal winemaking fashion, because what we want to really preserve is the freshness and the purity and the beauty of old vine Grenache. I'm just getting bothered by a wasp here. So what you'll find with this wine is it's not hugely deep in colour, but it's got a beautifully bright, refreshing, aromatic quality on the nose. Got lovely texture on the palate. So although it looks slightly pale, it's got lovely rich texture, really fresh. And it's a style of wine that's incredibly versatile. You can drink this chilled straight out the fridge and it's delicious. You can have it at room temperature by the fire in the winter, and it's equally satisfying. It's brilliant all-rounder for people that really love that fresher, more vibrant style that doesn't play so much on oak or concentration, but on freshness and purity and energy. And we're really proud of what Gorgeous Grenache has been able to achieve. It's been able to support a lot of growers, particularly up in the Riverland, whose fruit was previously not really that well valued, and give them much more of a sustainable future. So not only is it delicious wine, but you can actually feel good when you're drinking it as well. Thanks very much. Cheers. A lot of our labels at Thistledown do get their inspiration from Scotland and the role that the Scots have played in the wine history of Australia. And whilst James Busby is probably the most famous of them and who brought the vines over to Australia in the first place, there's another character who lived his life out in Adelaide and McLaren Vale called Alexander Kelly. He was a doctor, a medical doctor, who came over from Edinburgh, and he wrote books on viticulture, and he set up one of the first vineyards and wineries in McLaren Vale, which latterly became the Tintara vineyard, made famous by the Hardy family. And we've paid homage a little bit on the cunning plan, sort of a little floating chap with a boat on there is actually Alexander Kelly. And this is a label that draws some of its inspiration from the history, but it's very much an Australian classic. It's produced from low-yielding fruit in the McLaren Flat area of the region, and like most Thistledown wines, we pick it on the way up to capture that really kind of vibrant dark red fruit, and we handle it minimally again with wild ferments, discreet use of oak just to give structure rather than anything else. And whilst it's an archetypally Australian wine, there's no denying that, it's still fresh and it's vibrant and it's crunchy and it's got life to it. It's none of that dead fruit. And as such, it's done really well. The 2019 version of this wine was in Halliday's top 100 wines quite recently. And the 2020 follows on in that mould. If you're looking for a really beautiful contemporary style of Australian Shiraz, then look out for Thistledown, the Cunning Plan, a wine that definitely has its feet on Australian soil, but maybe its heart back in Scotland.